Ladies, have you ever sat back for a second and just thought about all the nice guys that y'all treat like shit and wonder why exactly you do that to them? Well, I honestly don't think y'all do that shit, but I felt like it would sound good for an intro and it would, hook the viewer a lot better because it works a hell of a lot better than starting by saying, fellas, have you ever noticed that whenever you treat the babe so well and you give her so much of you and you try to be the most caring version of yourself, that's when you get treated like shit? Like, I feel like that would deter a lot more people from listening than starting with the whole ladies, do you ever think about, the fact that you treat niggas like shit? But either way, I am going to talk about it because I actually do have a theory on why this happens. And it was actually, something that I thought of after watching a video plus listening to a bunch of different conversations with one or two of my friends. But before I can get into all of that, where are my manners? I should have started the podcast with a nice intro. So let me start by saying, welcome to Breakdown on West Side, your number one breakdown podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is Sir Denver B. This is a much shorter version of the podcast, which I feel I've actually extended a little bit more than I expected to do initially. Plus, normally I don't do these shortened, less edity, no instrumental type episodes for more than like 2-3 weeks. But the reasons why I do intend on doing it is actually mainly based off of something that I intend to reveal a little bit later on. But anyways, all that said and done, we have an episode. It's pretty short. I don't get that much time. It's usually only about 15 minutes. And I have an entire theory with examples and a bunch of things that I want to say around the entire thing. So I might as well just not continue eating into the episode beyond the 2 minutes. And let me just start by talking about something real quick. So there was a time when I was having a discussion with someone about a person that they knew who for quite a while had been cheating on the husband. And, even though she was a lot older, she was like in her 40s, 50s and shit. And you'd expect that by that time she probably shouldn't be cheating and shit. She was still busy sending nude type videos to some guy that she was supposedly having a fling with. And when she was busy talking about it, she was talking about how the husband to this woman is such a great guy, such a caring individual, and has always gone out and tried to do his absolute best to help the family. And the wildest part about it was this woman's nude video that she had sent to the fling ended up being shared in a group with a couple of people. And that caused quite a number of issues because even though the woman's husband wasn't on the group, they had mutual friends who are part of that group. And of course, by and large, I would like to think that they ended up telling this man about the entire thing. And it sounded so sad because this is a man who was giving his everything and he had been married to this woman for a couple of years, but he had pretty much taken up the full-on father role and chosen to take care of this woman and her kids who weren't even biologically his. And the guy was still giving his everything, but this babe was cheating, and on top of that, it wasn't even the first time she did it. And that sounded really, really bad. But I didn't really think too much of the story up until I saw a certain video that was posted up on Twitter, which I want to play for you guys before I can get into what I think of the entire thing, because I believe there's some things that happen to guys that we don't really talk about all that often, and we usually like to suck it up to simping or just a shitty situation or character development. And yet these are issues that affect both genders, even though one is always seen as the victim and the other one is always seen as the perp. So let me just play the clip for you. Here it is.
Nobody loses a woman faster than a man who really loves and cares about her. Women, what is our problem? I mean, you find a man is concerned about your well-being. Umefika home, umekula. Why do you look disturbed? You don't look good today. Have you applied for that job? Are you looking for jobs? Somebody who wants to be responsible, somebody who wants to be available in your life. Is that one person who you don't like, you disrespect, you feel like they're so obsessed and they're so desperate with you? What is wrong? Now, we love people who don't love us. Those who love us, we don't even care about them. In fact, we are busy working outside here, tainting their name. Now, you want the bad boy. And when I say bad boy, I don't mean your man, you know what I'm talking about. No, I mean these men who don't even care about her, the rough men. We want them. Now, when we get them, we start asking for qualities that were in this other man who was really loving us. What is wrong with us, ladies? What do we want? What kind of a man do we want? Because I think nowadays the question of who is your ideal man It's like an examination, composition. You have to stay for 40 minutes and write 1.5 pages of the kind of a man you want. And when that good man, the man that when we were growing up, we wanted to have, the man that would like our kids to have as a father, when they come into a life, we don't even care. In fact, we feel like they are becoming too much.
So I remember listening to this babe talking on this video like sometime on Wednesday, and as I was busy listening to her, I don't know, something kind of clicked for me, because I've heard this complaint quite a bit, whether you're talking about guy groups busy discussing alpha male shit or some other red pill BS, or with girl groups, or just in relationship forums where people talk about how, like, you know, if you're a nice babe, then there's this toxic guy that will treat you like shit, or like if you're this good guy and you try to treat a babe nicely, you know, there's this sort of, you know, dislike that she'll have for you and shit like that, which you can say is a bit misguided when you look one way or the other. But I kind of thought about it for a second, and I came up with a simple theory to sort of try and explain this situation, which I guess for now I can call the alternate dating theory, which can kind of explain what exactly is happening here and at least give some sort of an explanation to it. And I even used it as a response to the tweet which had the video, so I'm just gonna read it. So it says, and I quote, "Most of these quote-unquote nice guys go for a woman that's in the wrong stage of life or hasn't healed yet and gets character development. Flip the genders around and the same situation is also true." End quote. Now, when I was saying that, it probably sounded like, you know, it was too true or it was a bit false. But let me just try and break this down for a little bit. Because when you kind of look at it, the experience is not something that is only for guys or only for babes. This experience happens across the board. And, you know, people can come back and they'll be like, oh, you know, good guys always end up with toxic babes, or toxic guys end up with good babes. But when I kind of thought it through, I figured out that, you know, if you kind of look at the similarities and you even try to remove the genders out of the entire equation, you'd sort of start to realize that there's certain things that the good people look for that drives them towards, you know, the bad boys or the baddies, and that the baddies or the bad boys will find with the good guy or girl that they end up dating. And one of the things that you notice is that a lot of good people, they end up dating people who are not entirely good, or, you know, in a guy's case, it could be a baddie. In a woman's case, it could be a bad boy. You realize that these guys end up dating them. One, because, you know, those are the ones that are confident enough to approach these guys and are confident enough that, you know, they stand out and they look really good because they are confident and they stand out. But also, you sort of notice when you actually listen to these people talking about these baddies or these bad boys, that there's a certain sort of potential and opportunity to nurture and grow that potential that the good people usually sort of look at and they find very favorable with these people. Like, for example, you will find that when a babe is dating a bad boy, there's sort of this idea of fixing the guy that some of them usually have. I'd actually argue most of them have, where they'll see this guy's flaws, but they're like, this guy's a great guy, you just need to fix up some of these flaws. With dudes, there's the idea of molding a woman, where it's like, oh, you know, this babe is bad, but I can see her potential for good because I don't know what it is that I saw, but, you know, shorty is fine, so, you know, I can make her a good babe if I mold her and shit. And so the work of trying to change the person and make them a better version will sort of begin once they start dating this person and all. But one of the things that you will also realize is that the bad boy or the baddie will now start to take advantage of this person's goodness and, you know, the desire to make them better by, you know, practically continuing to do a bunch of their shit and expecting these guys to take up and soak up whatever BS they're doing, all with a desire to, you know, want to make them better. And you'll see that quite a lot, because you find that this bad boy is like, oh, you know, I really like this babe, she's a sweet babe. But, you know, he's still chasing a bunch of ass when he gets a chance to over the weekends when he's at the club. Or you'll find that this baddie is still busy posting up, you know, very, very raunchy photos and thirst-trapping dudes. And when a dude starts giving us some really good attention, you know, she decides to entertain it for a bit because, you know, the dude isn't there or something of that sort. And you sort of start to see this pattern where the good person is seeing the potential, is seeing the opportunity for growth with this other one. And on the other side, there's this baddie, there's this bad boy that is seeing the opportunity to exploit, the good character of this person and the understanding nature of this good person by continuing to do whatever the fuck they want. And this sort of toxic cycle continues. And interestingly enough, you see this happen a lot. You see this happen quite a lot. And sometimes people have asked, why don't the bad boys go and date the baddies? Why don't the good people go and date other good people? And, people have actually tried it. And the results are pretty mixed. Sometimes it works, especially if it's two good people who've come together and decided to have a relationship. But a lot of times when you find that it's like a baddie and a bad boy and they're choosing to date, they don't last very long together because the bad boy isn't willing to tolerate a bunch of the BS that the baddie is doing, and the baddie will also not tolerate a bunch of the BS that the bad boy is doing. So that can sort of implode, and even though it's expected to last, you find that because both people have rebellious natures in them and, they're not willing to take a bunch of BS lying down, they will constantly be at each other, and eventually both sides will split apart, busy talking shit about the other side. And they'll be busy calling one side stupid or dumb or immature or not good enough. And yet the weirder side of it is they'll still want to reunite with each other's sides for bases of things like casual sex and shit. Because they know that they only work together when it's for fun shit, but long term, the actual life thing, they know that they just don't click that well. And, after hearing certain things like this, I'm sure there's some person who's like, but why don't good people just leave these people whenever they notice stuff like that? And the unfortunate reality is, there are some people who will try and tell, this good person, leave this baddie, you deserve better treatment and shit. But a lot of these good people usually chalk it up to growing pains. It's almost like the good relationship fallacy, where it's like, it's not like relationships are always going to be all like roses and everything. There's gonna be a couple of thorns here and there. But, I love this babe and I'm willing to work it out. Or I love this guy and I'm willing to work it out. And, we're going to, make this shit work. Which a lot of times they realize you eventually realize that people are not underwear and you do not just change them like that. Like, for a person to change, it has to come from within and it has to be their choice. And a lot of times people don't really change all that much, But since most of these good people never really learn that up until they've gone through a bunch of shit with these baddies, well, you kinda have to let them go through it so that they can learn on their own. And it's an unfortunate reality, but for a lot of good people, the fact that they give a lot of chances means that those chances will be exploited like this quite a lot of the time. So with all that said and done, I really don't know a better way to end this than to pull a quote from the tech YouTuber Marcus Brownlee when he was busy talking about phones and the promises of future updates. When you're going to buy a product, buy the product for what it is right now and not for the promise of future updates. I know he was busy talking about phones, I know he was busy talking about tech gadgets, but this kind of applies with relationships as well. When you're going to date someone, or at least when you intend to date someone, you should mostly do it with the idea of who they are right now, not for the person you think they will be in the future. Yes, looking at someone's future, or at least looking at the possibility of how great they can be, is a great thing and it's worked for very many people. But in today's day and age of character development and people using other people almost like disposable materials, I believe utilizing what you know now so that you can make a decision that can impact you further forward is a lot better than trying to measure out or plan out what it's going to look forward and then using it on what you can see right now. Because at the end of the day, we never really know what tomorrow holds, and since we're not mind readers or sightseers to know that shit, we might as well deal with what we have right now so that we can plan for a better tomorrow. Although, then again, I could be wrong about this shit, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook, it is at Breaktime, on Westside, on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.